It's a Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Get your day started right here. Get your morning shave, get your morning shower, and get your morning Pitt. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You know what we do here Monday through Friday. We hang out every morning and just talk about Pitt things, anything going on with Pitt. We talk about it right here on the Morning Pitt. Might be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, whatever it may be. And however long we need to talk about whatever's going on in Pitt sports. And obviously Pitt's in the off week right now, but we've still got plenty to talk about. So make sure you hit that subscribe button right down there and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you'll know every morning when you got to turn on notifications. And then you get an alert sent to your phone every morning when we put up a new Morning Pitt video. You'll also get an alert whenever we go live for the weekly Panther-Lair show on Wednesday nights. And you'll get an alert, when we go live after the game for the post-game show. Finally got a start time for the Louisville game next week. Pitt's off this week, but next week they're going to be at Louisville on Saturday the 22nd, and that game is going to kick off at 8 o'clock. Now, it's a road game, so we won't be there. We'll be here in Pittsburgh watching the game and go live after the game. So maybe it'll start around midnight or so, the post-game show. We'll see exactly how it works out. But, it's all kind of up in the air. It's subject to change based on how the game goes. If it goes to overtime, if it goes a little more quickly, whatever it is. But if you subscribe, you hit that subscribe button right there and turn on notifications, you'll get an alert sent to your phone so you will always know whenever we go live. You don't have to worry about missing it. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also hit the like button too. Smash that like button. Give us the thumbs up on this video. We really appreciate it here at Panther-Lair.com. And of course, the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and message boards where you can hang out with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day, talking about Pitt stuff. That's what's going on at Panther-Lair.com. Like I say, we're in the off week right now. Pitt's 4-2 overall, 1-1 in the ACC, fresh off a 45-29 win over Virginia Tech, and obviously that win was spurred largely by the performance of one Israel Abanikanda. He's been, receiving national awards already, ACC awards for that performance. And look, when you run for 320 and 6 touchdowns, you're going to get some attention. And we talked a lot about that yesterday on the Morning Pitt. We talked about Izzy Abanikanda as a potential Heisman Trophy candidate. Now, just to clarify on all of that, give a little peek behind the curtain here at what the Wizard was doing, and I shouldn't even call myself a wizard here, but I don't think Izzy Abanikanda is going to win the Heisman Trophy. I don't think he's really going to get invited to New York City. But it was a good opportunity to sort of have an interesting conversation about what he's done so far and the recent history of running backs and their luck getting invited as Heisman Trophy finalists and what it typically takes for a running back to get there, which is to say it typically takes about 2,000 yards on the ground. So Izzy Abanikanda having a great season so far with 830 yards and 12 touchdowns, second in the nation in rushing yards, first in the nation in rushing touchdowns. All those stats we talked about, he's still got a long way to go. He needs 1,100. He needs almost 1,200 yards over the next 6 games, which means he needs to average 200 yards a game from here on out through the rest of the regular season if he's going to clear 2,000 in the regular season. That seems like a stretch, particularly when Rodney Hammond's going to be back, I would guess, for this Louisville game. So it's going to be a real challenge to hit that 2,000-yard plateau. But again, it was more an opportunity to just sort of talk about the season that Izzy Abanikanda has had. But let's expand out to the rest of the offense here and talk a little bit about the season this offense has had. And I mean, all the production stats, and they're averaging 35 points per game and 430 yards per game and all this different stuff. And we'll talk about more of that, I think, as we go through the week about the overall production of the offense. But I want to look at some individual personnel things today, like snap counts, like who's playing the most for this Pitt offense. And it's no surprise that it's offensive linemen. Pro Football Focus says Marcus Minor leads the offense in total snaps played, total offensive snaps played, followed by Jake Cradle and Matt Gonsalves. Those are your top 3 guys right now, and that's no surprise. I mean, that was the case last year too. Carter Warren led the team in snaps played with more than 1,000. Kenny Pickett was second because he never came off the field. But after that was Marcus Minor. Owen Drexel was 5th. Gabe Hoy was 7th. Jake Cradle was 8th. And Matt Gonsalves was 10th. So you had 6 offensive linemen in the top 10 in snaps played last season. This year, it's a little bit different. You've got Minor, Cradle, and Gonsalves at the top. And then Blake Zabovic at number 5 in snaps played. But the rest of the top 10 is all, quarterback and skill players. And actually, Izzy Abanikanda coming in at 9th in total snaps played. Last year, I think Vincent Davis played the most snaps of any of the running backs, and he was 14th on the team. So that's kind of notable to see Pitt sticking with one running back as much as they have, particularly compared to last year. Because last year, I think Vincent Davis was like 14th and Abanikanda was 16th on the offense in snaps. This is 14th and 16th. 14th and 16th in offensive snaps. Now, obviously, what's unique about this season is Rodney Hammond getting hurt in the first game. And that's given Izzy Abanikanda a ton more opportunities, and he's obviously made the most of those with his performance thus far. But Izzy Abanikanda coming in 9th on the offense in total snaps played. Konate Mumfield right ahead of him in 8th, despite only playing 5 games. Gavin Bartholomew in 7th in total snaps played. And Jared Wayne is the first non-lineman, non-quarterback on the list. He's 6th on the offense in snaps played. Bub Means is actually 10th. So that's kind of your top 10 is, 4 offensive linemen. Keaton Slovis, who's played the 4th most snaps, despite playing only 5 games. And then Jared Wayne, Konate Mumfield, and Bub Means, all in the top 10. And Gavin Bartholomew and Izzy Abanikanda also in the top 10. And I want to talk about Gavin Bartholomew for a second. And this passing game overall by some stats, but Bartholomew in particular, because it's really interesting. And I came across this stat yesterday. Just kind of, we were in a conversation on the message boards and just discussing this, discussing that as we do on the Panther-Lair.com message boards. And we were talking about, Gavin Bartholomew and how he's played, if he's played better, played worse, whatever it is. And like target-wise, I mean, Gavin Bartholomew is roughly right around where he was last season. He's had 17 targets this season, and he caught 14 of them. Last year on the season, he had 29 targets, I think, and he caught 28 of them. So at the midpoint of the season, he's got 14 catches. Last year, he finished the season with 28. So, I mean, you're talking about he's halfway to his total at the midpoint of the season. He's 14 of 17 as opposed to last year he was 28 of 29. But one thing that's really interesting, and I think it's something you have to consider when you talk about Gavin Bartholomew this year, is the stat average depth of target. And this is, Pro Football Focus keeps this stat, and I think it's an interesting one. It's how far downfield you are when the ball is thrown to you. You know what I mean? When you catch the ball. Average depth of target. I mean, it's exactly what the title says it is. And this year, Gavin Bartholomew's 5th on the team with an average depth of target of 7.6 yards. So his targets, on average, he was 7.6 yards downfield. That's behind, Jaden Bradley and Bub Means and Jared Wayne are all 12 yards or more. Konate Mumfield is just a hair under 10 at 9.9. And then you have Gavin Bartholomew, who's 7.6. And the reason I bring that up, and the reason it's interesting, and the reason I think it's important and informative and relevant when you're talking about Gavin Bartholomew's play this season, particularly compared to last year, as people have suggested that maybe he's not as effective this year as he was last year, or he's not catching as many passes. He certainly seems like he could be utilized more, but some people have suggested that maybe he's not playing as well as he did in 2021 when he was a freshman. Let's come back to that stat. Average depth of target. This year, 7.6 yards. Last year, 1.8. Now, this is something we talked about all offseason. Okay? I talked all offseason about Gavin Bartholomew and how one of the interesting things to watch with this offense in 2022, particularly overall, was how they would use Gavin Bartholomew. Because last year, when it was Bartholomew and Lucas Krull in the tight end core, they were used in very different ways. Bartholomew was in the flat a lot. He was running wheel routes a lot. Whereas Krall was stretching the defense. He was trying to work the seam. He was trying to get downfield more. Lucas Krall's average depth of target last season was 10.3 yards, which would put him, if you put that on this year's team, that's above Konate Mumfield and just 2 yards behind Jaden Bradley and Bub Means and Jared Wayne, who were 12 yards, 12 and 12 and 12.3, I think, for those three guys. And so they were being used in vastly different ways. Krall with an average depth of target of 10.3 yards and Bartholomew an average depth of target of 1.8 yards. I mean, it's a remarkably low number. Jake Zelinskis had a higher average depth of target. John Vardzell, Trey Tipton, Shockey Jacques-Louis, Melky Stovall, Jaden Bradley as a freshman had an average depth of target of 10.1 yards. Gavin Bartholomew, this is the way he was being used last year. This year, you go from 1.8 all the way up to 7.6. And while those aren't receiver level numbers, it's not even the kind of numbers Krall was pulling last year in terms of his average depth of target. It's still a lot further downfield than how he was working a year ago. It's still putting him in a different role and asking him to do different things. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't think he's capable of that, but I don't think we can really have a conversation about Gavin Bartholomew's performance this season without considering really two things. One, that the low target share, where he's fifth on the team in targets behind Konate Mumfield, Jared Wayne, Bub Means, and Jaden Bradley. Jaden Bradley has 20 targets. Gavin Bartholomew has 17. I did not expect that to be the case this year. I did not think Jaden Bradley, through the first 6 games of the season, would have more targets than Gavin Bartholomew. I thought Bartholomew would be behind Mumfield and Wayne for sure, probably Means, but that was it. I didn't think anyone would out-target him through the first 6 games of the season. Anyone else, I should say. But he has been. So, number one, he's not being thrown the ball enough. He's not seeing the ball come to him often enough. But also, number two, is how he's being used, that he's going downfield more, that he's being asked to be more of the number one tight end and not just sort of the complementary piece who sort of functions as an H-back, fullback, that kind of thing, which is what he was doing. I mean, he was lining up that way a lot last season. And, I think I looked at the stats. I mean, it was like just a shade under half of his snaps last year on offense. He took them in the backfield, not lined up as sort of an inline tight end. This year, he's getting a lot more of his work in there. I think he's played, I forget what his total snaps are, offensive snaps. I have them. I should just be able to bring them up right here. 282 snaps and something like on offense, and something like 250 of those he's been lined up in line, as opposed to last year where that was like maybe half of his snaps. And so he's doing different things. He's being asked to do different things. And I think he's doing well when the ball is thrown to him. People are concerned about drops, but Pro Football Focus only credits him or charges him with 1 drop pass this season, and that was in the Virginia Tech game. But I think his usage has just been, it's been a change. And maybe that's part of the ongoing evolution of this offense to this point. So it's been interesting to see kind of how that has gone so far, which I don't think it's gone well enough. It needs to go better. They need to do more with him. And then it'll be interesting to see where it goes over the next 6 games. Konate Mumfield, despite missing the last game, is still your leader in targets and receptions. He's had 37 targets, 25 receptions. Part of that is helped by the fact that Jared Wayne has also only played 5 games. He's got 33 targets and 23 receptions, catching close to 70%, averaging 17 yards per catch. Jared Wayne is. Mumfield, he's catching about 68% of his passes, 10 yards per catch. Not a ton of yards after the catch per reception, about 4 for Mumfield, 6 for Wayne, which is a little better, to be certain. And then, Bub Means, 26 targets, Jaden Bradley, 20. And that's kind of what your passing game looks like right now. And the personnel thing, and I thought this was interesting. I kind of went back through the Virginia Tech game. and looked at the personnel usage. And part of the reason I did that is because there were some things that I thought stood out to me in the game that I thought, boy, if I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing, it's a pretty drastic departure, but I'm not entirely sure that I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing. And so I went through and kind of I jotted down a bunch of notes and took notes from the game and tried to base things on those notes and see what I could figure out. And it turns out that what I thought I was seeing actually happened, which is that this team went in 11 personnel, which I think I talked about this after the game on Saturday and maybe a little bit yesterday on the Morning Pitt. This team went in 11 personnel, which is one running back and one tight end with three receivers on something like better than 60% of its snaps on Saturday against Virginia Tech. And most of that, probably 40 some of those snaps, actually every time they were in 11 personnel, it was those three receivers, Jared Wayne, Bub Means, Jaden Bradley, with Gavin Bartholomew and Izzy Abanikanda. But then there was one more snap where they took Abanikanda out and Vincent Davis played in that 11 personnel grouping. Now they used 11 personnel, 12 personnel, which is two backs and one tight end. They used the 22 personnel, which is one back and two tight ends. The 22 personnel, which is two of each, and then the 21 personnel, which is the two backs and the one tight end. They only did that for a couple of snaps. But didn't score a touchdown out of it, as much as everybody wants to see Daniel Carter and Izzy Abanikanda on the field together. They didn't really... They got one touchdown when they had two backs on the field together. Otherwise, they got 4 touchdowns out of that 11 personnel, which, like I said, they used for more than 40 snaps. And they also got one touchdown out of the 12 personnel with one running back and two tight ends. I maintain, and I've talked about this for a while, and I really think this team's best offense comes out of being in that 11 personnel, out of having 3 receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 running back. At some point, we all know how defenses have approached Pitt. We all know what defenses have done. They've just loaded the box and dared you to try to throw. And that's natural. When you have a run-heavy team that hasn't had a whole lot of success in the passing game, you expect teams to do that. You expect defenses to try to do that. And so that's not a surprise. The surprise is how much, at least prior to this last game, Pitt has insisted on still trying to run tight formations, heavy formations, the stuff with Ryan Jacoby and a tight end, and sometimes a fullback as well, or 2 receivers and the 2 tight ends, and one of the tight ends is Ryan Jacoby. I've complained about the Ryan Jacoby sets a bunch of times, and no disrespect to Ryan Jacoby. I think he's going to be a good offensive lineman for Pitt. But the problem is, when you put in those sets with Ryan Jacoby, there are 2 outcomes, and they're both bad. One is that you tip off that you're going to run, which is what the defense is going to expect. And if you do drop back to pass, by having him out there, you have limited your passing options. You've limited the potential targets in the passing game. You're not going to throw a pass to him. I know he caught a 3-yard pass against Georgia Tech. That's not going to happen again. Or at least it probably won't, and it shouldn't. So you either tip your play that you're going to run, or you try and pass with only 4 potential receiving targets. And it's known pre-snap that you only have 4 potential receiving targets. Either way, you simplified things for the defense. Whether you run, which is what they expect you to do, or you pass and they have one less guy to care about or worry about in that situation. It just doesn't, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. I don't think you're getting very much out of it. I don't think it's really producing for you. I don't see the upside of going with those sets. Now, they scored a touchdown with Jacoby on the field. I forget which one it was. I jotted all these things down. So I tracked all this personnel. It was the 5th touchdown. So whichever touchdown was the 5th touchdown. That was the one that Jacoby was on the field for. I guess that would have been Yeah, that was the 2-play drive. The first play was like a 29-yard run, and they got the late hit out of bounds, and then it was like a 10-yard touchdown run or something. Jacoby and Daniel Carter were both on the field for that. I just don't think I just don't think it's something they need to do. I don't think it's something they need to go back to. I don't think it's something they really need to work unless they're in situations at the end of the game where they're trying to run out the clock and the opponent still can't really stop them. I think they give themselves the best chance to win and the best chance to execute the offense with 3 receivers, a tight end, and a running back where you can spread it out a little bit. Force the defense to have to create at least a little bit of space. And that opens opportunities for you in the run and the pass. Because, I know you like to have a lot of extra blockers in there and a fullback and an extra offensive lineman and all those things. But it's just not really working all that well to do that. I think you have a much better chance if you can try to spread the defense a little bit and then find the creases and find the holes and the gaps and try and make plays that way. And, when you look at how much they were in that 11 personnel grouping on Saturday and then the success they got out of it, about 44 plays and they scored 4 touchdowns. So 1 out of every 10 plays out of that personnel grouping scored a touchdown. That seems good to me. I would think. It just seems like that's the obvious choice to make your base offense. You know what I mean? Whatever your foundational offense. What is your base offense? What's your regular offense? To me right now, it should be 11. 11 personnel. I think that makes the most sense. But we'll see what they do. I mean, the reality is they've changed a lot sort of game to game. Whether it's personnel or formations or under center shotgun, how they've changed a lot game to game. And there's value in being a chameleon. There's value in switching up what you do. There's value in trying to keep defenses guessing and not try to render some of their game prep moot because you're not doing the things they expected you to do and you're doing some things that maybe they didn't prepare for. There's value in that. I get it. But I think you also need to find out what you're good at and do that. If you can find something you're good at, you should do those things. And I think this team might be best at operating out of that grouping. All right, that's some thoughts on the offensive personnel. We'll get into some thoughts on the defensive personnel tomorrow and continue sort of this mid-season review. I guess the last thing as far as it relates to the offense is injured guys. The main ones that we know about right now, I mean, Rodney Hammond hasn't played since the West Virginia game. I think he's close. I would expect him to play at Louisville in 2 weeks when Pitt goes down there for that game. Kanate Mumfield and Jalen Barden didn't play against Virginia Tech. I would expect those guys to be back, given just sort of how it looks right now. Carter Warren is one that I think is going to be close to getting back. I don't know if Owen Drexel is going to be back anytime soon, but I would think Carter Warren should be able to play, maybe at Louisville, which I think would be a boost to this offensive line. The coaches seem to really like what Branson Taylor's been doing, but they also, you're going to have to make decisions at tackle. You'll get to a point where Carter Warren, Branson Taylor, Matt Gonsalves, and Gabe Hoy are all healthy and ready to play, and you're going to have to decide who your guys are. I don't know if you want to rotate the way they did against Virginia Tech, where they really did kind of shift, not every drive, but fairly often. And that included playing Taylor at left tackle and Gonsalves at right tackle, Taylor at left tackle and Hoy at right tackle. I think they did that. And then they definitely then shifted Gonsalves over and had him play left tackle and Hoy play right tackle. And they kind of mixed it up a decent amount. I'll get the exact numbers on how often they shifted that. But I don't know if you want to do that week after week after week. I think you need to identify your 2 guys and pretty much go with them for the bulk of the game. And that's going to be interesting to watch at Louisville. And then, the 5 games after that. This second half of the season, if they, finding out if the coaches decide to stick with a rotation at offensive tackle, it feels wrong to do it. It feels like it's a less than ideal plan to go that way. But we'll see. If they feel that good about all 4 guys, and I think a healthy Gabe Hoy is a real boost to this offense. I really do. I think when it comes down to it, a healthy Carter Warren and a healthy Gabe Hoy give this offensive line the best chance to succeed. but I don't know if they're going to have that or how healthy they're going to have those guys, or if they're going to be, still kind of just recovering and rehabbing and just coming back to the point where you do want to rotate a little bit just to get them some rest so they're not overdoing it. All right. That's kind of the personnel stuff with this offense. We'll see, there's always something new new surprise that crops up. Let's, as we always do on Tuesdays, let's look around the Coastal real quick. 3 other games involving Coastal Division teams. Obviously, Pitt and Virginia Tech. You saw that. Georgia Tech, that interim head coach excitement is still rolling. For the Yellow Jackets, they beat Duke at home in overtime, 23-20. Jeff Sims had 2 touchdowns passing. He rushed for 95 yards. Duke was held to just 278 yards of total offense. I don't know if the bloom is off the rose. They've already won 4 games at Duke, and I think they've got a decent chance to get to bowl eligibility with 2 more wins over this final stretch. But and hey, you run into a buzzsaw that is Georgia Tech without Jeff Collins. I mean, get out of the way. Clemson is glad they got that game played in the first week, I think. Carolina went to Miami, and I said this was going to be an important game for the Coastal Division of Carolina having a chance to sort of separate itself a little bit, and Miami having a chance to sort of jumble up the thoughts on who's the best team or who's at the top of the Coastal. Well, turns out Carolina was able to separate. 27-24 win. Carolina kind of went cold on offense, only scored 2 field goals in the second half. Drake May, 19 of 28 for 309, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Meanwhile, Tyler Van Dyke, who got benched against Middle Tennessee, right? 42 of 57, 496, 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. Still only scored 24 points. Carolina's defense is not good. Miami's kind of in shambles right now. Henry Parrish, we talked about Henry Parrish, the running back who had been committed to Pitt in the same class as Izzy Abanikanda. Both of those guys were committed at the same time, and he ended up decommitting, signing with Ole Miss. He went there for a year or whatever, and then is now at Miami. 11 carries for 19 yards against North Carolina's defense, which is not very good. He opened the season with back-to-back 100-yard games against Bethune-Cookman and Southern Miss. Since then, he had 85 against Texas A&M, 57 against Middle Tennessee, and then 19 this past weekend. So Henry Parrish, the Parrish Abanikanda running back chase that I was hoping for, I thought would be a fun sidebar storyline this season. It's kind of falling by the wayside a little bit. But Carolina improves to 5-1 overall, 2-0 in the ACC. Miami is now 2-3 and 0-1 in the conference. They lose their conference opener. And then the other game involving a Coastal Division team, Virginia hosted Louisville in the somebody has to win contest, since both teams were winless in conference games so far. Louisville got it 34-17. They did not have Malik Cunningham. He's out with concussion symptoms. But Louisville still had 473 yards of offense. How about Malik Cunningham has started 40 consecutive games at Louisville? This is quite a streak. Came to an end this past weekend at Virginia. Brennan Armstrong, first 300-yard game of the season for the Cavaliers. 313 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Last year, all right, so that's his first 300-yard game of the season, and Virginia has now played 6 games. And he finally got a 300-yard game. Last year, Brennan Armstrong played 11 games for Virginia. He threw for 300 in 10 of those 11. He threw for 400 in 6 of those 11, and he threw for 500 in 1 of those 11. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a fall off for young Brennan Armstrong in Charlottesville. The records will tell us who's at the top of the ACC, and I guess that's who we go with for now. But I don't think we need to guess much about who's at the bottom of the ACC, or at least at the Coastal Division, I should say. Virginia, 2-4 overall, 0-3 in the conference. That's a bad way to start. All right, you look at the Coastal right now. North Carolina's at the top. They're 2-0 in ACC games. They are 5-1 overall. Georgia Tech, 3-3 overall, but 2-1 in conference games, having won their last 2. Pitt and Duke are both 4-2 overall, 1-1 in the ACC. Virginia Tech is 2-4 and 1-2. That ship is sinking rather quickly. I mean, it might have been underwater for a while now this season. Miami's 2-3 and 0-1. And Virginia, as we said, 2-4 in the AC, 2-4 overall, 0-3 in the ACC. And then a quick look at Pitt in the conference right now. They have the number 5 scoring offense, averaging 35 points per game. They have the number 7 total offense, 430 yards per game. Points are more important than yards. So I mean, you're number 5. You're in the top half in both categories, and is top basically pretty much third or so in scoring. So that's and this is the whole conference. This is not just the division. This is the whole conference. That's pretty good. Defense, giving up 26.2 points per game. That's 11th in the ACC. That's not great. They have number 3 rush offense in the conference, the number 5 rush defense, the number 7 passing offense, and the number 6 passing defense. These numbers aren't that bad. It puts them just slightly above the middle of the pack, again, in the entire conference, not just the Coastal Division. And I think if you're a Coastal team right now, and you can be in the upper half, close to upper third of the ACC in these various stat categories, you're going to have a chance to win the division, which is the case. I mean, there are 4 teams that have 1 or 0 conference losses right now, and Pitt is one of them. And they've got the number 1 running back in the conference. Izzy Abanikanda with 830 yards. Sean Tucker at Syracuse is the next closest in rushing yards in the ACC, and he's 284 behind Abanikanda. And nobody else has double-digit rushing touchdowns. Izzy Abanikanda has 12. I forget who, Tucker or somebody has 9. So Izzy's the best running back in the country, in the conference right now, and one of the best in the country. Pitt is a top half of the conference offense in terms of production, borderline top third of the conference in offensive production. And again, like I say, I think that puts them in position against the rest of the Coastal to have a chance to compete for and potentially win the division. Obviously, at 6 games, you got a long way to go. You got a lot of games to be played to figure these things out. But there's nothing you look at right now. And I probably said this already. I probably said it yesterday. Said it on Saturday. I'll probably say it every day this week and next week, I imagine. But there's nobody you look at right now and say, whew, they can't win that game. There are going to be more challenging games that are more challenging than others. I'm keep repeating this stat. They've never won in Chapel Hill. And the last 2 times they won at Miami was in 2014 and 1963. So it's been a while. But there's 6 games to play. And nobody really looks all that daunting. So that's run down the offensive personnel and a look around the Coastal Division. We'll talk more defensive personnel, more injury stuff, and just kind of more mid-season review as we continue this week on the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Of course, don't forget tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. we will be live for the Panther-Lair show right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And keep it tuned to Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, you can find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And of course, message boards where people are talking all day, every day about how much they love Pitt's offense, about how great a job Frank Cignetti is doing, about how they think that Cignetti should be named the head coach in waiting. And so that when Pat Narduzzi finally decides to retire, they have the next guy ready to go. Not all of those things are being said on the message boards right now, but some of them are. Some. Go to the message boards and find out for yourself exactly what is being said. Panther-Lair.com. Thanks for checking this out. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will talk to you Wednesday morning for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.